Well, today we're gonna do a little comparison between the acquisition of first language and the second language. Well, we found definition that is the second language is a language learned at a later state or step after a mother tongue. The first language, in other hand, is a language acquired by babies naturally from their parents. They may have double first languages as a result of parents coming from different linguistic backgrounds. Well, complex. Its first language is not complex because it is acquired naturally and enforcedly. A teacher mastered the ruler from an early age, although more can be learned in the classroom for proficiency purpose, as first language is less complex. However, a second language is a complex language because it seems to be a foreign language in which you have to start from scratch to acquire basic concepts. And now, learning process. It a first language as is learned from birth by listening to parents converse with him. A second language, in other hand, is often learned in classroom, in plays, online tutorials, listening to others speak in a different linguistic environment in an other foreign country. There are many ways to learn a second language. The difference of the context of first and second language acquisition play an important role in the acquisition process. While it is possible to learn a second language in various contexts, first language acquisition takes place only in a natural context, in a social group the child is growing up and where the child gets L1 input only. The different context for a second language acquisition can also lead to variation in second language proficiency due to affective factor. Another comparison, the first languages, based on the hypothesis that language is an innate faculty and not a set of skill acquired culturally. The second language is the learning of a second language once of the basic acquisition of the first language has been complete. This is often the case when a child speaks a language other than his or her own and attends school for the first time. Well, the first day of life, during the first 2 or 3 years of life, a child needs to interact with other language people to make this language faculty operational and given language that is in the first language. And in the second language, a student who learn a second language experience several stages during the language development process. For this reason, the stage of language acquisition vary and depend of the individual's prior linguistic experience. Well, a conceptual approach. If the acquisition of second language occurs simultaneously and under the same condition of the acquisition of the first, it is difficult to distinguish between the first and the second, and we find ourselves in the situation knowing initial bilingualism. Obviously, there is no specific feature of the acquisition of a second language, although there is the possibility of difference between the acquisition of one and two language. Okay, we have a little different between first language and second language. For example, we found that in the first language, it start with a telegraph speech, and the second language said that the child you can start with complete sentence. We can say in that example that, for example, Carlos say, "I want water," while Andres learned to say, "I want water." This is the difference. So, the second that we can say is it is a natural part of everyday life. So, in the second language, it is a new aspect in the child's life. So, we can say that in that case, for example, Carlos simply live a life in English, while Andres has it as a part of his school day, right? So the third one is it is based on universal grammar by itself. So in the second language, it has a basis in the grammar of the first language. So we can say that in that case, for example, Carlos learned grammatical patterns unknowingly while Andres remembered adjective in Spanish while his English teacher gave him a list or adjective in English, right? So it required no conscious effort. So in the second language, it required conscious effort. So we can say that Carlos simply followed his instinct to communicate, while Andres is trying to learn to pronounce and to use correct grammar, right? So next one is it is based on listening as first resort, and it is based on content that involves technical knowledge on the language. So in that case, we can say that Carlos, for example, listened to his mom or dad all day, while Andres received material developed specifically for learning the languages, right? So the last one is require no instruction. The second language require instruction. Well, in that case, for example, Carlos' mother certainly doesn't teach his grammar, while Andres has a specialized English teaching professional to provide him with instruction. Well, and now similarities. So in the first language and the second language, the learning stage are predictable. For example, begins to associate word with situation, begins to make sound, move and telegraph, language, etc. Here you begin to say and understand basic words and sentence, move to reading and writing, etc., etc. Well, the second is mixtape are part of the process. That's right. For example, Carlos, the same man, couldn't learn to talk if he didn't have other people to talk to do. Similarly, learning and dress depend of the opportunity you have to practice with other. So there is use a signal context, etc. The interaction is basic. Um, Talking can be more challenging than understanding. Prior knowledge help. Competition develops with instruction. Well, so in that case, we can say that a person born in a given content feels the basic instinct to communicate with others, to say, start making sounds until they can articulate complex words and sentences. However, someone who needs to learn a second language make a conscious effort to learn to communicate. Since both have predictable stage, involve making mistake, really on interaction and develop with instruction. So, for example, if a person is fluent in more than one language, the language he first acquired is known as the first language, while the language he later acquired is known as the second language. The key difference between the first language and the second language is that acquiring for first language is a natural and enforced process, while acquiring the second language is a time consuming and the time consuming process. Thank you very much.